Welcome to the fifth part of this tutorial on basic mixing. Last time we have made a basic mix of a drum kit using equalizer, and this time we're going to have a look at the reverb effect. When it comes to mixing music, reverb is mostly used to add room and depth to the instruments. As some of you probably can remember, in the first episode we listened to the mixed version and the unmixed version of the track, and what happens when we record. Basically the natural room of the instruments disappears, and reverb can bring that back. So we're gonna have a look right here at a few different plugins. I'm gonna start with my favorite built-in plugin, which is the Roomworks Reverb right here. This effect has basically everything that we need for mixing, and it has a nice visual interface that can show us what happens to the reverb signal when we edit it. Okay, the next one is the Reverence effect. Another reverb also built into Cubase. This one is a little different, it also has a visual interface, but in my opinion it's a little more difficult to use. Down here you can see all the parameters that you can edit, and these are basically the same as these in the other effect. So both these plugins basically do the same and are even edited in the same way, but they sound a little different, and we're going to load up a third one here. This is a plugin by Isotope, and as you can see there are a lot more things that we can edit. It, for example, has this visual equalizer where we can edit the sound of the reverb, EQ the sound of the reverb itself. But other than that, most functions are basically the same. For example, here we have solo wet, here we have wet only, and in this effect, basically what you do is you bring down the mix to 0 or 100, depending on whatever you want. The reason why we might need multiple reverb plugins or multiple effects, different effects in general, is that they might sound a little different. In the case of the reverb plugin, they all are operated in the same way basically, and they just sound different. So it's always a good idea to experiment with different plugins so you're able to find one that really contributes to the mix. Once you found a reverb plugin that you really like, the next difficult question is how to apply it to the track or the tracks, depending on whatever you want to do. In this case, I'm going to show you three methods of applying the reverb, because it's actually a difficult effect to use. First, we're going to apply it to the trumpet track right away. So in this case I went way over the top with the reverb just so you can hear it better. I've put it on the trumpet 1, which is the close-up mic. You can see here this track has no effect. Sometimes when you record a trumpet, for example, or another instruments with two microphones, it might be a great idea to use reverb on one track and not on the other one, which will give you the option to play with the balance a little better. The second method would be to apply the plugin to a group track. In this case, both trumpet tracks, will be affected by the reverb equally. This is especially useful when we have an instrument that is split up into multiple tracks and we want the reverb to affect all the tracks at once, so we don't have to put a plugin on each track of the instrument. So that was the reverb on the group track of the trumpet. Next up, the third option we have is to create an FX channel track. By right-clicking on the track itself, we bring up the track window, and there we have the option to add an FX channel track. We then can select a plugin that we want to be on the track, and we're going to go with the reverb again. So now we have an extra track that only has reverb on it, and I'm gonna go ahead and name that reverb test, just for now. To actually use the effect, we have to send a signal to the FX channel track. I'm gonna bring up the group right here, and first I'm gonna disable the effect that is still loaded. Okay, so here we have the send option, and we can choose our FX track. This will send the signal from this group to the channel, and then we activate it and bring up the output to 0 dB. Now we're sending our trumpet signal to the FX channel track where the reverb is on. The great thing about that is we can, for example, use the reverb that is built in here, or we can choose other effects that we want to stack on top of the reverb. Next, we need to make sure that we're only getting the wet signal of the reverb. Otherwise, the volume of the trumpet will increase because we're having a dry signal mixed to the other dry signal. The way we have routed the signal now is that these both tracks go into the group track of the trumpet, and from there we're sending a signal, the trumpet, to the FX channel track right here. The beautiful thing about FX channel tracks is that we have the option right here to send it to another group, which basically gives us more flexibility. I also can adjust the reverb mix by using the volume fader of this channel. Okay, so these are 3 methods of how to apply reverb to your tracks. To edit the reverb plugin, so you have basically the sound that you want, you have to know what the knobs do. And we're gonna have a look at that right now. It is very important to understand a few basic things, but it's not too difficult and you can play around with it and hear what changes. We are back to the reverb on our group track. And right here you can see the interface of the reverb, basically. All the knobs that influence the signal in a different way. We're going to start with the pre-delay. This value determines the time between the dry signal and the time where the reverb kicks in. So the next value we can adjust is the reverb time. And as the name suggests, this basically influences the length of the reverb. Then we have the size of the reverb, which basically makes the room bigger or smaller, depending on how you adjust it. This might be a little harder to hear, so I turned up the mix all the way and we're gonna listen to it again. Next up we have diffusion. This determines how strong a signal is deflected by the wall of the room and how strong it is spread out. I again have turned up the mix all the way so we can hear the effect better. And at last we're gonna have a look at the width. This will determine how wide the stereo image of your reverb effect is. Not the stereo image of the dry signal, but the reverb. I might turn up the mix again to have you listen to the reverb a little easier. Okay, these were audio examples for what are, in my opinion, the most important parameters of the reverb effect. As you could see, there are a lot more buttons to play around with, but the 5 parameters we talked about are the most important to get you started using reverb. Next time we will add reverb to the project we're mixing right now, and also add a room reverb for all the instruments at once. Thank you for watching again, and goodbye.